All right, namaskar everyone. My name is Nilesh Oak. Uh, Good evening to those of you, everyone in India. Good morning, or whatever is appropriate time to everyone else around the world. I tried to share the PowerPoint, but it did not allow me to move through it. So, plan number two, option two, we are not going to use the PowerPoint. Namaskar, Maheshji. Thank you for joining. We had some minor glitches. The Facebook system, I am trying to figure it out, but I know many others are. So I was going to use a PowerPoint, and it's not it's not allowing me to move through the slides. Namaskar, Alokji. Okay, so I'll give a couple of minutes since we had to restart, and then I will just walk you through it without the PowerPoint slides. Okay, Priyanshuji, namaskar. Okay, so we'll wait for a couple of minutes. So if you say hello there, that's great. I know that you are there, and also I get to see the number. Right now, I see a small number, like 8 people, but there were like 20 before, so they must be in the process of rejoining again. So we'll give a couple of minutes. So if you can see me, you can just type that you can see me. All right, any one of you that, and you can hear me well. If you can just respond to that, these two, that will be useful. Please comment that you can hear me clearly, and you can see me. If you don't see me well, that's okay, but you should able to hear me properly. Namaskar, Mayaji. All right, and based on the connectivity, I know that the number will keep on floating up and down. That's what I see. That's what happens with the other Facebook Live I have done, or for that matter, Zoom, or any other medium like Skype and whatnot. Okay, so all right, let's begin. Okay, and then others can join. So the subject is Indian logic system. Now, in an Indian system, the word that is used closer to the logic, of course, the logic itself means tarka, but as a logical system or a logic system, the word that is used is nyaya. And nyaya is much more than a logic, okay? But I will use that word interchangeably as we speak. Now, Nyaya is a huge subject. In fact, any of these are huge subject. And the way I want to give this presentation today is a very small aspect of it. We can call this as a prakarana, as a avrutti. Prakarana in the sense that here we are not discussing a Nyaya versus some other darshan of Indian system, or Indian logic versus Western logic. In fact, those dichotomies may not be even required. But I want to talk about a few specific aspects of Indian logic system, how they relate to, I don't know if you can see my screen, hopefully not, but I have to close other messages as they show up. So what we'll talk about is few aspects of Nyaya, or the Indian logic system, and how they very closely connect or closely related to how one does research. Now, when we talk of research, I'm not talking of any specific field. It does not matter. It doesn't matter what subject you are researching on. The basic principles, they are not different. They should not be different. If they are different, or if someone perceives that, well, these principles of research or these principles of nyaya or in a logic do not apply to what I am doing, and I am doing research, then something is wrong. There is a gap there, and we will talk about it. Okay, so why do we do research? So we'll get into the elements of Indian logic system, Nyaya, as they relate to research. In fact, all of them relate to it. But before even we go there, why do we do research? Or anytime we are doing a research, and usually the research may turn into a project. You may end up writing a white paper, you may end up writing a short presentation, giving a short presentation, you may end up writing a thesis, you may end up writing a book, you may come up with a new product, new service. I mean, any of these things are possible. Okay, so that's the outcome. Now, why do we do research? There are not many different reasons why we do it. I mean, we can summarize those into few. I'm not talking of any specific number, but for example, and I had this on my PowerPoint slide, but so that I don't forget the point, I'll just refer to the notes here. One reason you may do research is because there is a unsolved problem. There is some problem for which there is no currently there is no solution available. That is one reason why you may want to do research. Okay. The second possibility is somebody has already come up with a theory, a claim, a product, a service, some framework, some instrument, whatever that outcome is, and you want to do additional research to do the validation of that concept, validation of that output, the product, theory, claim, whatever it is. And how do you want to do validation? Not by just simply saying I agree with that person or I disagree with that person if it's an invalidation, but by doing something new of your own, maybe by testing it multiple times, testing in another situation and see if it's still valid. So that's another reason that a system exists, a theory exists, claim exists, output exists. You want to validate it. Okay, that's another reason other than solving a problem that is not being solved. Okay, let's see. Now, when you try to validate this, a existing theory, you want to do it preferably not just by repeating what that previous individual has done or previous series of individuals might have done. You want to take that same concept and test it to something that has not been done but still relevant and see if it still makes sense. Okay, then you have made some original contribution, although limited. You have made some original contribution. Let's see. Yeah, then there is another possibility why you might be doing research. You might be looking at the same set of evidence, like in terms of input, but you think that there can be a better explanation than what the previous predecessors have done. Okay, and you may see the better explanation can actually lead to our better knowledge, growth of knowledge, better understanding than what previous people have done. So now you're not looking at new evidence, you may be looking at the same evidence, same set of evidence. I'm not talking just one particular evidence, and to see if your interpretation can provide a better explanation. Okay, so that's another possibility. And then another one is comparison. That's kind of a last one, and you can split this further as many as you want, but these are typically 4 or 5 uh, clear categories as to um, why you do this. Forgive me if I get a bit distracted. I'm closing some other messages that are coming. I have closed as much as I can, but still, I have to keep the Facebook open, and I will learn slowly, how to even close other Facebook applications. But sometimes these messages and stuff keeps on coming, and I keep on closing them without reading. All right, so there are these few categories. For example, to solve a unsolved problem, to validate an existing claim or existing theory done by somebody else, to validate it by doing something different, like which is to say to use that same theory, method, whatever it is, and apply it in a situation where it is not been applied before to see its sturdiness. okay, to see its range, how far we can go and still it's used successfully. And then, so therefore, we have to use innovative situations where we use this. And then interpretation of the same evidence, but sorry, interpretation of a same evidence, but your interpretation is different. Okay, so you might be contributing. And then the last one is that comparison of, say, same problem, and everyone is claiming that they have a solution. How can you may be looking at doing using a systematic method, logic, to look at all these potential claims who everyone is claiming to solve the same problem and try to figure out which of those claims are the best, okay, or give the best solution to the problem at hand. So these are the few situations. Now these are the reasons why anyone is doing research, or anyone ought to do research, or anyone should do research. Now let's get to the Indian logic system, Nyaya or Nyaya Darshana. Okay. Now there are many books written on Nyaya. I'll stick to Nyaya Darshana. Now this Nyaya Darshana, it says, why do we do it? Say anytime, anything you are doing anywhere, okay, any action, we always, at an unconscious mind, we do think like this. Okay, why am I doing this? Because if that why is not there, you won't even do it. Okay, it could be as simple as I want to feel happy, I want to feel joyful. Okay, that could be the reason why you might eat ice cream, and then you may say, okay, I want to feel joyful. How am I going to do it? It can be done many ways. You may go and play cricket or something else. You may listen to music. You may eat ice cream. So there are many ways you can achieve that objective. And then, of course, you should know what is the end goal. Okay, so yes, you want to be happy. And how are you going to decide, or how will you know that that indeed happened? Now, in case of just feeling happy, that's like yourself. I mean, you inside know and you verify and say, okay, that's good. The ice cream thing worked. But when we do this in a, say, research, or especially in an academic setting or any or corporate setting, the challenge is there are so many people involved. It may be somebody's idea, someone else is working on it, somebody else, the third person, is actually going to use the outcome. And in all of this why, how, and what may be lost. Okay, so for example, I suggested as an exercise, and I don't know how many of you received that note in some fashion. I know some posts were made, but those of you who are working on your master's or PhD, writing a thesis, researching on a specific project, whether a short project, thesis based, non-thesis based, these are the questions you ought to ask. Like, why I am working on this particular subject, why I'm working on this particular project, a particular theme. Subject is too broad. Then how am I going to do this? What are the tools I'm going to use? Am I going to do experiments? Am I going to go in the field and do field survey, field study, field work? Am I going to look at what everyone in the past has done and make a very efficient review of what they have done? And then you also have to respond to what will be the outcome of this project? And not just that, how, because you might just say thesis is the outcome. No, but in what way that thesis will be used? I mean, who will use it? Who is going to look at this as a solution? So these are the questions that you ask. Now, what does logic has to say, or the Nyaya Darshana has to say? Nyaya Darshana talks of 16 elements, okay, that one has to become expert if one has to use the entire system of logic. Okay, the Tarka Shastra, you can say, but there is logic. I mean, the Nyaya has more than a Tarka Shastra. And the part of this is, it says the Prameya, Pramana. You might have heard, those of you who are familiar with Nyaya Darshana. If not, it says Prameya, Pramana, Prayojana, Samshaya. We are going to get back to it. Samshaya, Drishtanta, Siddhanta, Avayava, Tarka, Nirnaya, Vada. These 10 things that I just described, these are, I would call them, just for a simplicity, good things. And then there are 6 bad things. Okay, now they are not bad in the sense that therefore we don't want to know about them. We very much want to know about them, because inadvertently, even we may not be aware, but we may end up doing those, and then that's not a good thing. So those are Jalpa, Vitanda. Now some of the words you might be familiar. Jalpa, Vitanda, Hitva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, Nigrahasthana. Now my goal is not to impress you with 16 words in Sanskrit. So we will get to practical what they mean. So for example, as it relates to our subject, the formulating your thesis, actually working through the thesis, working your research project and making it useful. uh, Prameya, I wish I could share the PowerPoints. Unfortunately, that didn't work very well. We will continue to experiment in future. I did do another Facebook Live, and I had the same problem. So if I go there, then I cannot come back. That's what happened one time. So I'll just go with verbally. And what I can do, I can send the PowerPoint presentation that I was going to share to Ganashamji, and then he may able to share with everyone else. Okay, I presume that can be done. So I'll check with Ganesham afterwards. So how does anything begin? Okay, now some of you may say, if I ask you, why did you select this specific project as your research project for your master's or PhD? Again, I'm repeating, it does not matter which area you're working in. Now, predominantly, I presume we have a group of sociology students here working on master's, PhD, and professors here. But I'm a chemical engineer, by the way, by profession, bachelor's, master's, and whatnot. I worked in corporate world. And it doesn't have to be a PhD thesis. Any problem solving, and life is about problem solving. We have to ask these same questions. That's why the logic, you cannot escape logic, you cannot run away from it, even if you want to. So the first question you ask is, what is it that is not happening? Like why I am doing this, why I have selected this project. And some of you, I understand, some of your students may say, well, that's because my professor asked me to work on this. Now, that's a reasonable answer. I have no problem with that. In fact, it's a reasonable answer. The professor is someone, assumption is that is knowledgeable about that area and might be aware of some of the gaps in the knowledge and might suggest one. When I did my master's, it was very much like that. But then as a student, it is your responsibility to ask, why is this subject important? Okay. So that's why this inner circle, when I send you the PowerPoint presentation, is a why. Like, why are we doing it? Logic says, the Indian logic system or any logic system will say, as a broad base, why are we doing it? Because we want to find out the truth, or the best approximation to the truth, discern the truth. We want to eliminate the error. We want to minimize the error, So when we remove the dust, then, or clean the window of a car, we can see better, right? So if there is any other dust, we want to remove it. That is part of your research. What else? You want to see, so many people are claiming so many things, right? For a same problem, many people are claiming that is the solution, or they have an opinion, they have a certain position, and they think that is the right position. How do we decide between these multiple positions? Otherwise, somebody comes and says something to you, you think that's correct. Another person comes and says something to you, you think, no, that is correct. No, that's what creates the chaos in the world, right? So how do we decide between these multiple options? And so for that also we need a logic. Okay, so then we ask the question, what is it that is not happening? Okay, so why am I doing this? So that's the first question. And then the answer should be, because I want to find out the truth of this. Nobody has done it before, or if somebody has done it, what they have done is good, but here is the problem. This is what they have not solved, and I want to solve it. That's why you are doing this. Okay. And then the next question is, how are you going to do it? So once you define what you want to do, then that how will slowly start building. Okay. It will tell you whether you need to perform experiments, whether you need to go into the field and do the survey. And I'm using the field work as a survey because of your sociology subject. But that applies everywhere. In a corporate world, we call it benchmarking. If you want to improve a product, before we jump and start improving our existing product, we actually would go out and look at the competition and see what, and it doesn't have to be the identical product, but we will look into similar area and see what different things they have done, what is the new technology that is available, and then try to bring that in while designing our new product. So it applies everywhere. Okay, it's not limited to a specific area or the specific field of academia or specific field of corporate world. Even in everyday life, we have to do this. Like buying a product, buying our smartphone. We look at multiple products and see what are the features and so on and so forth. And then, so that's like, so samshaya, which is to say you are not happy with the current situation. Okay, and the samshaya, which has to come from what? Not just like, hey, I don't know about this, can you tell me? Yes, you can tell, but you may not need a PhD project for that. The samshaya, you say, has to be sandigdha, meaning the samshaya, the doubt, devil's advocate, has come out as a result of a deep study of that subject. That leads you to a certain doubt, and now you want to solve that particular issue. Or if you want to just, you don't have a doubt, but you want to know about something or find out more about something, then we call it a saprayojan. So, but there is no point just simply knowing, let's say, what are the different trees in a state of Bihar, for example. I mean, that's not a bad subject, but you want to know, why do you want to know these trees? I mean, what's going to happen after that? Is it the reforestation that you want to apply to and want to therefore find out which trees are suitable for a particular geography? So there has to be a purpose bigger than just your title. And that's my last point, and we'll get into questions. So as I go through this, if you have, if you can just even type, if you are working on a specific master's or PhD project, I would ask you to type the title of your project if you have it, and you may be at a different stage of this project. So as far as this particular session is concerned, I want to focus on formulating your PhD thesis, formulating your project. Okay, why did you decide to do it, or why you should work on it? How you go about, what are the different tools that will be required, that will naturally come from what your project, what are you trying to achieve, and how will you know the success of your project? One success is that you write a thesis, you defend your thesis, and you are given a degree, master's, PhD, MPhil, whatever it is. That's a partial way of defining the success. But another way of looking at success is how many people actually refer to your project, how many people refer to your thesis, how many people used your thesis to do something out of it that is useful. If none of this happens, then this is a very wasteful endeavor, And what happens is, I was in Bhopal in January, giving a presentation at one of the university. And one very bright student, not from that particular university, she asked right in the audience, and that was a perfect thing. She said, why does she see, and hopefully you see that same thing too, being in academia, that, and I had explained my work and the certain method I use. And she said, why do I not see people using a logical flow, logical method, like this, why, what, how, and there are many other aspects. In academia, in the research in India. And her question was very, very relevant, very pertinent, and right on the money. And so first thing I did is I briefly answered that question. This is not something you can answer in 5 minutes or even 1 hour. But I asked everyone in the audience, and I forgot, but there were 200, 300 people in the audience. I asked everyone to stand up and give her a standing ovation, just for daring to ask that question. And why is that? Because that is actually a challenge. Now, when I came back, I was talking to another professor here, an Indian professor of Indian origin, but in America. And I raised the same question to him. I said, okay, that's a challenge. Like we always discuss the challenges in India, being, originally from there. And he made a comment that, well, even in other places, including America, similar things happen. And I completely agree with it. But here is the difference also, okay? They happen in a much lesser proportion in America or many other countries. That's number one. But the second thing is, sometime because of relatively few people and relatively bigger resources, and now America is struggling as much as India is or other countries are, but relatively more resources, the effect of some mediocre work is not that bad. Okay, I mean, it's there, it's bad, the thing is bad, but it's not that significant. But a country like India, where we have so many people and relatively speaking limited resources, relatively as a ratio, we have to be very careful how we use every rupee, so to say, whether it is in a corporate world, whether it is in a government services, infrastructure services, or academia. So answering these questions, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? What is it that I'm trying to fix? What is it that I'm trying to solve? And then be having a clarity on how we are going, how am I going to achieve this? And what will tell me the success of the project? Okay. And so going back to the logic, that is that prameya, pramana, prayojana, drishtanta, siddhanta, avayava, tarka. So so samshaya is where you say begin. Okay, devil's advocate. Why am I working on this? And or why should I work on this? And then you propose a solution that may be right solution or wrong solution, but that's a prameya. Okay, and to do this, you need a prayojan. That is that why, ultimate big why, and it cannot be too up high. Like I want to be knowledgeable. That's a good starting point, but you need to have a very specific reason. So that's a prayojan. Okay, and pramana is like how you do it. What are the different means to that goal that you're going to use. And then of course the proof is in the pudding. That is that what, how you define it. So that's all I wanted to say as an introduction. Again, this feels like a monologue because of a Facebook Live instead of, say, Zoom, or now we have another software called Namaste. So I have to experiment with that. So with that preamble, I'm going to stop. I think this is the time for you to ask questions. And when you do that, we will, I'll try to respond to those. So as specific as you can, that will be good. I'm going to go down the list here. And thank you very much. I didn't see those messages, by the way, when I was speaking. My bad. Okay. So I'm going to look at the questions. So guys, as this goes on, if you have questions, please type the questions. Be as brief and crisp as possible so that it doesn't take me much to read them. Okay, so I'm going to go with Alokji's question there. Will be happy if you will tell something about Anvishiki in Kautilya Arthashastra. Okay, so now, so great question. I'm not going to answer that question, at least not from a Kautilya Arthashastra, but I will, or even from any specific subject. But I will discuss Anvishiki in a generic sense. And what you will find is this subject of Nyaya. So Anvishiki, it refers to what? It refers to analysis. Okay, it refers to a deep analysis, slicing, dicing of the data, information. Okay, logical, using the logical arguments. I mean, again, Anvishiki is the word used for a Nyaya Shastra also. Okay, so but what is from a Kautilya Artha Shastra? Now, I'm not going to go there. I mean, that will be going totally away from the topic today. But the objective of this is not to teach you any particular subject, but I had a very specific mission in mind, which is I see as my frustration. So why I was interested in this topic, even when was suggested by Ghanshyamji, is that I find, I'll digress for a minute, Alokji. I'm coming to your subject, but it will look like a digression. When our HR minister then, Smriti Irani ji, what she did, and I'm a great fan of her, like very dynamic person. What she did is, when she was in HR, she said, at least at a minimum, let's start there. I mean, this all PhD work is there, but people cannot easily access it from a distance. So she took this initiative of digitizing it. Okay, and this may be an ongoing initiative, I don't know. But then somebody sent me the link saying, hey, you can see the work there. I went, long story short, I went there. And I work on the specific aspects of Mahabharata and Ramayana, the dating aspects, chronology using astronomy, and 12 different fields of sciences, the data from that. So I was curious. So I just looked at the latest thesis, PhD thesis on Mahabharata. So I just typed those keywords, and so-called the latest top 20 theses that I found, I downloaded them. This was few years ago, 3, 4 years ago. And I started reading through them. By the way, believe me, I'm a very fast reader. Um, if you know a certain subject, you can, and you can develop fast reading habits. Some of you may not believe this, but um, I can read a thesis, I mean, just as a first draft in 20 minutes. Believe it. Okay. It happens in a Facebook. Sometimes they'll write something long, and I will respond immediately. And they say, well, did you even read it? And actually, yes, I have read it. The point is, I'm looking for, I say, I know this, I know this, I know this. I never heard this. So I only focus on that, you know. So if you have that background knowledge, it really helps. It's the essence of Indian education system that we have lost now, you know. People don't see anymore the importance of remembering things. There is no knowledge without remembering, by the way, guys. But that's a digression. So back to this. So I read those 20 theses, and I found, I'm very happy to say, being on the record, very unhappy in my inside, but comfortable saying this, that those top 20, so-called 20 theses on the Mahabharata that I pulled down, they were next to useless. Absolutely useless. It was a pure waste of everybody's time. For most part, it felt like a copy paste, but I'm not so much worried even about the copy paste. In a review, you will have to take material from some previous researchers. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you give credit. But what was it that was new about that particular thesis produced? And I went through 20, and they were randomly selected, except they were recent theses, and there was nothing new. Okay, so that's a sad state, and that's, we should worry about India. That may be the sad state around the world, but we should worry about India. Okay, so Anvishiki is this again a Nyaya Shastra. It's a method of analysis. It goes into scientific acumen. Our Shad Darshanas, we can talk about it. But you will find this, there are many books written on it, so I don't want to go to specific Kautilya Arthashastra, and that will just digress the subject. Okay, Alokji, you are asking next question there. Is research similar to Shodha in Hindi? Yes, the answer. Thank you for asking a question I could answer easily. The answer is yes. Shodha. I mean, you can give, if you see, Sanskrit language is such, and Hindi is very close to Sanskrit. The pure Hindi anyway is very close to Sanskrit. So is Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, many all languages of India. You can see the origin in Sanskrit. You can go and just type the word, for example, research, and you will find 50 words for research. So Shodh is definitely one of them. All right, Alok ji. Okay, so I'll go through that. So Alok ji, he's asking another question. Praman, he's saying ये मुख्य चार है: प्रत्यक्ष, अनुमान, उपमान एवं शब्द. He might be just telling it. I don't know if he's asking a question. Let me see. Okay. Oh, very good. Alok ji, thank you very much. So he did a fabulous job for me. In fact, you should get Alok ji to do this Facebook Live, or if he's at your university, to just get him to do it. So what he did is he listed all the 16 elements that I briefly referred to of a Nyaya Darshana, okay, and gave a detail of those two. Now let me talk quickly about the Prameya. So he has written there, ये प्रमेय 12 है, like आत्मा, शरीर, इंद्रिय, अर्थ, बुद्धि, ज्ञान, उपलब्धि, मन, प्रवृत्ति, दोष, प्रेत भाव, फल, दुख, और इसका उपवर्ग. I mean, release from all of them. Which means what? As a prameya, in the sense of the subject that we might be interested, which is, I said in a different way. I said, I'm not specifically focusing on any subject. It can be engineering, it can be science, it can be, medicine, chemistry, physics, sociology, genetics, health, governance, can be anything, which will come into that prameya. Now, what happens is, prameya is like a subject of investigation. Okay, now that remains a very broad as a subject. But when we get to a specific one, we have to specify what it is, and then come up with our viewpoint. Now, how do we come up with our viewpoint? We come up with our viewpoint in the context of a specific problem that we are trying to solve. Okay, so specific problem must be defined before we can give our theory or a conjecture, that will be called also prameya. That is another meaning of a prameya, like a hypothesis. That's the another beauty, but sometimes can be a confusion. The word same word may mean different things in a slightly different context of discussion. Okay, so he has listed all those. Thank you very much, Alokji. He's saying, okay, so Alokji, that's great. Now, when Alokji is doing it, I want others, those who are listening, if they are still around, I see 21, 22 people. So I want you to list it. Maybe you can ask this hypothetical question. You may not have a subject yet, but you may have some idea this is what you want to work on. And we can actually take the subject and we can walk us through, only thing is we cannot do a back and forth conversation. That's the limitation of this Facebook Live. So back to Alokji there. I am doing my PhD on a cooperative study of axiology in Indian and Western perspective. Hope you will guide about. Okay. Alokji, can you, I don't need to know this to answer that, but can you explain what axiology is briefly in the comments? That will help me. My knowledge will go up. Okay. So, but from an Indian and Western perspective. Okay. So remember at the beginning, I discussed there are 4 or 5 specific reasons why we do research. Okay. Now, one of them that Alokji is describing there is a comparison between, say, Indian versus Western. Okay. So first, very, very simple, I would start with is why, whatever that axiology refers to, and Alokji, you will type it and hopefully I'll say it. But doesn't matter. Let's call it X. Okay, so he wants to do a he says cooperative study. Okay, cooperative, comparative, that's fine. But again, let's go to those inner circle. Why? Okay, so whatever that subject X is, and you want to either do a comparison or cooperative. To even to do cooperative, you need to understand what they are. So it begins naturally as a review. This is not new research, guys. Okay, this is some basic work. You need to know what is the Indian perspective on axiology. Then you must understand what is the Western perspective on axiology. And even before that, why? People have done something on axiology before, right? So why am I doing it? Other than I also want to do it. So you wanting to do is okay, but there has to be a purpose. That is the prayojan. And even the prayojan is not enough. Somebody says, I want to do the comparison of 2. Even that's not enough. Okay, in a what you call a academic work or a corporate work, the question is the study of values. Excellent. Okay, very good. Great subject. Okay, so you want to say, why do I want to do it? Maybe because you want to improve the communication between global communication. Okay, so for example, I'll just use the word, say darshana. Okay, I'll give you example, not as a values, but darshana, like India has a Shad Darshana, we talk about it, and within that we talk about Astik Darshana versus Nastik Darshana. Now, the way we use these words, so talk about the communication or the values, but in this case, I would say not value, what I'm going to describe, but a meaning. So as soon as, say, a typical Indian, any one of us, when we hear the word Astik or when we hear the word Nastik, immediately we have our in imagination. We will quickly translate this as what? Atheist versus, say, religious or something like this. Now, that is not, that could be fine. In another context, actually, that may mean that. But if you are studying the darshanas, then the Astik and Nastik does not mean that at all. And I'm not going to go into detail, that will be a digression. But it has a totally different meaning, completely different meaning. Okay. So is just like that, is that the idea that, sometimes the value, you might use the same word, you may say the honesty matters or the truthfulness is important, but the truthfulness in the Western context could be different than a Indian context. Is that the reason why you're doing it? Again, that's still not sufficient, because at the end of it, I honestly, and not me, it's you and your professors and whoever, or your student, if you are a professor, want to know, is this, what is the outcome? So what? So finally, that question you may ask with that what is, so what? What if I don't work on this subject? What's the loss? Okay, who is going to be in the pain, so to say, besides you, that you have to find another subject to do your PhD? Fine. but why am I doing it? I mean, so for example, I'm taking a very silly example, like say, I'm looking through the window here and I have a tree in front of my house. I can take a project to count all the leaves on this tree, and that can be a very interesting activity. But once I come to count the number, what do I do with it? I mean, who did it benefit? And if I wouldn't have done it, would that have been okay? The answer is okay in this case, right? It's perfectly okay not to count the leaves. So, we have to become a skeptical. That is that samshaya. And the samshaya of the Indian logic system, there in the Nyaya, it describes is like, samshaya of a buddhi, like a devil's advocate. Why am I doing this? Do I need to do it? Should I do it, or should I do something that is more critical, more important? This is not the samshay of the mind, that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, samshayatma vinashyati. The person who is like, skeptic, he just questions everything, doesn't do anything. Okay, he's wasting his time and other people's time. Okay, so back to Alokji. So that could be, I mean, so yeah, so how do you do it? I would say first, start with the why are you doing this? Okay, naturally it will tell you what others people have done. So going back to that samshay, is there a specific issue in this axiology domain that is not been solved? Or is there a crisis right now because of the differences, let's say, between the values from the Western system versus Indian system? Get to that problem. What is it that's not happening? What is it that is not working? What is it that is causing problems? What is it that is causing crisis? And then you try to solve that, or come up with a solution. It could be partial solution. So that's where you need to begin. In fact, I used to, going back 20 plus years ago, I was a corporate trainer for a long time. I still do corporate training. Okay. And I always ask people these three questions, formulating anything, any project. First question is, what is it that's not happening? What is it that is not working? What is it that's creating problems? Okay. The second question I would say is, how do you know that? Which means, is there a evidence to show that this is happening? Okay, just because you say there is a problem is not sufficient. There has to be evidence, from multiple data sources, that you have to justify the case that this is a truly a problem and not just your opinion. And then I used to ask the third question, going backward, like what, how, and why. How do you know it? And now the why question is like I used to say as a devil's advocate, so what? Just like I gave you the example of a tree and counting the leaves. So what? I mean, you think it's very important to count the leaves. What if you don't do it? I mean, who is going to feel bad about it? If the answer is no one is going to feel bad about it, maybe it wasn't a good idea to begin with. So Alokji, hopefully I answered. I mean, hopefully I answered that question. So you have to start with that why, how, and what. Many things become clear, and in the process, you will find out what pramanas you need to use. Okay, what the siddhanta would look like, assuming you are successful or your theory is correct. And what happens? You propose a prameya, you propose a hypothesis, you go through this process, and if I could show PowerPoint, I would have done that. And if it doesn't quadrangulate, or if it doesn't triangulate, then you modify your theory. You said, no, that was a wrong guess, wrong hypothesis. I need to go through this. Now, sometime what research will do is, research may go multiple rounds, but sometimes it may not able to, depending on the scope. But it said, hey, these are the 5 things that we tried as a theories, and they definitely don't work. So then you know that these 5 things are not there. Like the famous example of Thomas Edison. Like I worked for General Electric for many years, and Thomas Edison is the one, everyone should know that name. Light bulb and many 1,000 plus inventions. He started General Electric. Okay. And so when somebody asked him, when he tried something and the light bulb still did not work, it did not lit, right? And say, hey, so how is it going? He said, I found today one more way it does not work. Okay. I mean, he said it a bit sarcastically and humorously, but that's another way to look at it. All right. Let's go. Abhinavji is asking how to go about creating a frame of reference for a query topic. Same answer. Okay. So you may brainstorm many ideas initially why you want to work on. and that may come from your personal liking. Like somebody, say for example, I like chemistry. I didn't even know why I like chemistry, but I was in a sixth grade. I had these three books: chemistry, physics, the NCRT program, then many years ago, and I just loved it. I mean, I loved physics equally. I did not love biology as much. So you can have your personal preferences. So that may be a starting point. But once you decide a certain area, Abhinavji, again, it's the same method, which is why, what, and how. Or why, how. Okay. Um, I'll go to the next one. Utkarshaji, respected sir, my question is, what is criteria for selecting of the problem for any thesis? In a way I answered it, but I'll specify more. That last question, why? Now, why can be answered in a couple different ways, So I'll go back to my corporate days. I used to teach Lean Six Sigma. I taught many other things, but Lean Six Sigma was one of the core area I did for a few years. Teaching master black belts, corporate executives, and whatnot. Again, same thing. So you start with what is it that's not working, what is it that's not happening, and so on. Then you say, how do I know that this is true? Which means looking for evidence to justify, to validate that that is the case. Then the third question is what answers your question, Utkarshaji, which is, so what? No, why bother? So you just tell yourself, okay, so this is a problem, and yes, there is evidence for this. So what? Why bother? Big deal. I mean, if I don't do anything, is that going to be a big problem? Or this is like a crisis? Let's talk of a crisis, like say the corona, and that's why we are in self-distancing, and we need to be in self-distancing, okay? Boost our immune system. Somebody will say, why bother? Right? And what is the answer? Well, if you are not careful, if you don't care, you will die. And with that, you may make many others die or suffer. Sometimes the dying may be even easier than the suffering in between. So this particular corona crisis, for example, tells us the seriousness of it, right? Now, what do we do with our projects? You say, what is the impact? What is the social impact of this? What is the financial impact of this? Okay, what is the impact on people's health, which comes under social again, for example. So what is it that I'm trying to solve? And if I solve this issue, what is the benefit? What is the benefit to the society, benefit to the company, benefit to whoever, wherever you're working on? So Utkarshiji, that actually tells you that is the criteria in selecting. And so I'm saying, if you can get to the financial impact, that's the best. Why it's the best? I'm not saying everything has to be measured in rupees and dollars, but that's a very quantitative and objective criteria. And it actually forces you to see the seriousness of your project. Okay, if you cannot monetize it, if you cannot see the financial benefit, now financial is not the only one. There can be societal benefit. There can be a peace in society, which means what? You can actually take a peace in society and turn that into a financial dollars. When you see what happens, like these quarrels, or danga, whatever we call it, and a lot of property is destroyed. Okay, that's financial issue. So you can actually calculate the impact of any of this, and you should force yourself. Galileo, I hope everyone knows the name of Galileo Galilei. And I love his quote. He said, our job, I mean, we should do this, is that anything that is measurable, that's something you can measure it, he says. And anything that is not measurable, or anything that appears not measurable, make it measurable. And I cannot agree with him more. Every time you will not get the exact numbers, but we can always estimate, we can refine those methods. So Utkarshaji, to answer to your question, calculate the impact, calculate in terms of financial impact, calculate in terms of, so we call those tangibles and non-tangibles or intangibles. So tangible is like something that we can quantify, this will increase the health of 10,000 people or whatever it is. Okay, or certain percentage, whatever you want to call it. And then you can tie a financial figure to it. It really helps, so corporate thinking, bringing that into academic area to a limited extent is very much required. I hope I answered that question. Let's go to the next one. Alokji, again, I'm doing a project on economy of philosophy in mentoring Professor Balram Singh. Okay, so Professor Balram Singh ji is mentoring you, I presume. Okay, on economy of philosophy. It is a database project. How I can make it easy? Okay, now since I don't know the nature of it, that may not be easy to answer. But go back to this same thing, guys. I mean, you may start thinking, okay, it seems like Nilesh has one solution to every problem. I'm not saying that this is it, like why, how, and what. But I'll tell you, this is the beginning. And if anyone who chooses to miss this beginning, anyone who chooses to avoid these hard questions of why, how, and what, you know, you get stuck somewhere else. A simple analogy would be someone on a motorcycle, and through the red signal, and if the person, with the civic sense sometime or in a hurry, looks, I don't see a cops around, the police around, I'm going to go through it. He may successfully go through it and not get caught. Goes through another red signal. But all of us can be assured he's going to get caught eventually. That same thing happens if we avoid these hard questions of why, how, and what at the beginning, and don't work on them enough to get the satisfactory answer. We are going to get caught, and I'm telling you this from my experience of 20 plus years in corporate world. The people will do these Six Sigma projects, and then now they're stuck. Oh, how do I know that it's success? I said, well, how did you define it at the beginning? You did not define it well. That's why you are struggling it now. Alokji, very difficult to, I mean, not easy for me to answer a very specific question as to how you can make it easy. But at whatever stage you are right now, take that project, try to put this into this metrics of why you are doing it, what are the different things, and how does the success look like of this project? What will define that you have done a good PhD project, or not PhD, just the project, whatever you're working on, the economy of philosophy? What is the current philosophy, on the economy? Put it like this: how they measure it, like GDP, for example, right? So if GDP is not the right one, and there are enough reasons to believe that GDP is not the right one, I won't go into that. Then what are the other measures, and has anybody used it? So you have to start doing this, which is part of this why, how, and what. Okay, let's go. Shantanuji, an example with counting of leaves could be correlate with leaf or canopy surface area and carbon sequestration. Okay, I have read one research paper way back. Okay, so what Shantanu is saying there is that counting the leaves, I said that's a very wasteful activity, and he's saying, well, that could be a meaningful activity, and I agree with him. My point is, it is a meaningful activity in a certain context, which is what's the goal? Um, what's the goal? The measuring of um, carbon CO2s, or testing the ozone layer. So you start there. That is the why. You want to global warming. That's like a very big hat, and within that, a CO2 or ozone concentration, other global warming gases. Ammonia, whatnot. You will go through that, and as a part of it, this counting the leaves on a tree, for example, would be one of the small activity, very meaningful but small activity, which means it needs a context. Just don't run and start counting the leaves, and then come back and say, how can I write a thesis about it? That is the very, Shantanu, glad you brought it. That is the very point I am saying. The activity should have a purpose. On the, out of our Shad Darshanas, the Vedanta, what we call, or Brahma Sutra, and Vachaspati Mishra wrote a commentary on it. The commentary goes by the name Bhamati, and it's said that that was his wife's name and so on. And he used to discuss that with her, and he dedicated that whole book to her with the name Bhamati. That's a side fun story. He uses the word that any inquiry, Anveshaki, by the way, is an inquiry. That's another meaning of it. inquiry into the truth of things. Any inquiry should have this saprayojan and sandigdha, meaning it should have a very genuine, useful purpose. And sandigdha, which means the doubt why you are doing it, because you want to solve something, you want to know something that you don't know, and that has come out of a deep study. So when you do deep study, you already know the impact. It tells you why you should work on it. Okay. So yes, Shantanu, I mean, that will be very relevant, but we need to put that framework in place. What is that relevance? Let's go to Samiksha ji. Many program and policy related to health in Bihar, but still why we need to focus in women's health, especially maternal health. Okay. So what if I understand your question, Samiksha ji, I'm thinking the way I understand, you are saying there are many programs and policies related to health in Bihar, but still why we need to focus on women's health and especially maternal health. And what I presume by that is still there are many challenges with the maternal health. Okay, not specific to this, I'll tell you as a broader philosophical point, but very pragmatic point is this. Life is problem solving. That's we will always have problems. We may think of our time, and everyone feels like that, as our time, the specific location we might be in, specific financial strata that we might be in. We feel we are challenged. And that's true. That may be very, very true. What you will realize is that, or I'm in America sitting here, right? And you must be, I mean, many of you, not all of you, would be thinking, oh, well, if I can go to America, the life would be great. Okay. I mean, think of a mirage. I mean, there are some great things about America, but there are many challenges of America that one would not realize sitting in India, and vice versa. Okay. It's easy for me to sit here and give a lecture, but the challenges of India are many different. So the point is, no matter where you are, there are always going to be a problem. Okay. And so life is problem solving. So I'm saying there could be many reasons, like many programs might be there and the policies, but they're not addressing the issue. 2 points I will make, Samiksha ji. One is, no matter what we do in any area, there will always be problems. Problems in the sense of there is always a room for improvement. Okay. Upanishad uses the word kshina dosha. It's a very pragmatic. It realizes that you will never able to eliminate all the dosha, all the errors, but goal is to minimize it. So depending on circumstances, depending on particular area, literacy, resources, corruption, we may and effectiveness of a program, but it will come back to this one. Maybe not all, but some of the programs, they are not well thought through. So the money might be spent, but you may not see the outcome because no one has gone through a very effective thinking of why, how, and what. And the second point, one is, as I said, the problem will always remain. Maybe a smaller, the intensity may go down, but it will always going to be remain as long as the births, new babies are being born. The maternal health will always be an issue. I mean, always be a subject. Just remember that. Okay. Now the second one is, the way we make these improvements, the way we do research, is not like we do research one time and we solve all the problem. It's the process, and if I had a PowerPoint again, I would have shown you. The process is iterative. Okay. So one problem you take, you solve that problem. It sometimes may lead to additional problems, or if not additional problems, meaning it created the problems, it will lead to problems of higher complexity. Okay. So some of the simple problems, like have a hospital, that may be easy to do. Have a doctor and have a nurse may be easy to do. Maybe go people and tell them, hey, anytime you're not feeling well, come to a hospital. That may be easy to do. But then there are layers. Is the medicine available? Is the right medicine available? What are the side effects? So it can go on and on. Okay. So we solve these problems in an iterative fashion. In some sense, we should feel happy, not happy at somebody's pain, but I mean, if there are no problems, then life would not have a meaning. So there are, I mean, this is a philosophical position, but even in the presence of, like, you are in Gaya, right? So what the Buddha teach, so dukkha is everywhere, but in that context, finding that central unmovable point, that it does not affect you, or actually it can even bring you joy because you have found a way to overcome it, so that's the idea. Again, go back to possibly the reason why, how, what this is there, but also recognize that all problems will never be solved. Okay, we have to just keep on make improvements in an iterative fashion, on the basis of. Okay, thank you, sir, is saying a big thank you to. Okay, all right, we are getting close to the timing here. Let's see. Okay, Alokji, actually, he says, thank you, sir. So I'll skip that. How beautifully you solved many problems on the basis of Nyaya logic system. Hopefully, Alokji, beyond you, I mean, besides you, the other people who are listening to it also can see the importance of this. And sometimes, the solution may look like that's it. That's the solution. I mean, do this. It's like, right now the corona crisis is going on. And honestly, what can you do against the virus? You cannot kill the virus. You can improve your immune system that so that it cannot attack you. And if you see the Bhagavad Gita or our whole Indian Shastra, it talks about that, right? Uddarena atmana manam natmanam avadayat. You are your best enemy. You are your best shatru. If you go and eat junk outside and don't wash your hands properly, then you are your enemy. And if you take proper precautions, do good exercise, yoga, pranayam, eat nutritious food, do a good reading, and then you are your best friend. Okay, all right, let's see. I'm just going down the road. Okay, so everyone says thank you, so I think it's a time to stop. Last question, anyone has any other question? The only way you can let me know is by a comment. I'll give you 2 minutes to type your question, if any. Otherwise, we will stop. And do let me know if you are interested in seeing, it's maybe 10 or 10 pages or so. I can, if you are interested, I'll send that presentation to Ghanshyamji, and he can circulate at least in your department and university. Okay, so next question there. And those of you who have to leave and who has left, that's perfectly fine. Abhinavji is asking, would you please suggest a book to improve on understanding these methods better? Okay, so just from a purely Nyaya perspective, of course, I will say Nyaya Darshana, but we don't need to go there because that may get into a complexity. And sometimes the Sanskrit to English commentaries are not very friendly English. They use a very esoteric English, and it's not easy. If you read a book on, not even a book, you don't need a book, but you can read a book. And many of these books are, by the way, available in PDF, and you can just download from various sites. You just search in Google, you will find it. Books on scientific method or the logic of scientific method. Okay. And you hear a scientific method and people immediately think, oh, that only applies to physics, chemistry, biology, and engineering and medicine. No, not true. They apply to no matter what you're doing. If you are doing research, if you are going to work on like you are considered above graduate, like master's or PhD, this applies to you. Take my word for this. You can say start with the work books by, these are bit heavy books, but on Google you may just see the logic of scientific method, and even that you will find some weird explanations. Okay, so you have to use your buddhi to decide this doesn't make sense, and so on. A couple of books like Sir Karl Popper, let me just I'll type the name here. Okay, his two books. One is the logic of scientific. Okay, second book is Conjectures and Refutation. So you'll find them, both of them, in PDF. Now it has some mathematics also. And those of you who are scared of mathematics, I'll tell you, you can simply ignore the mathematics there. When the mathematics something he starts talking, and he doesn't talk much mathematics, in some cases he does, just ignore it, but just go to the other written portion. Okay, it may require multiple readings. Okay, but this is the best that gets on the philosophy of science. Okay, I don't think there is anything above that, at least in the Western world. The Sir Karl Popper's these two books, and then there are 20 more. But if you read these and if you like them, then you can go to those more. Okay, so that's my suggestion there. Start there. But also, as a fun, you cannot just go to Google, just type one word and get the first answer and run away with it. I mean, only fools would do that. Okay, so the suggestion there is, if you want to search through Google, just on the internet there is so much useful stuff. Okay, so much useful stuff that no any one university or even 100 universities together will not able to beat that stuff. How much stuff is there. But you have to know, you have to have a discriminating attitude. That's why that nyaya is required again. Just to read something and say, no, that doesn't make sense, just move on to the next one. So you need that. Okay, so Alokji is writing. Alok, thank you for remembering me. Bhamati Samvita, where Vachaspati Mishra says two words, Prayojana and Sandigdha. And Alokji, he says Saprayojana, very important. And just Digdha you might have a doubt, but Sandigdha meaning it's a meaningful doubt, and meaningful purpose. That Sa word adds that. Is also symbol of economy of philosophy of Indian husband-wife relations. Good one. Okay, I like that. Yes. Okay. If there are no other questions, we can stop. So Ganesh Shamji, if you can type a note there saying it's okay to stop, then we will stop. Okay. Or if I don't hear from you in 2 minutes, I will stop anyways. So thank you everyone who joined, and thank you for sticking through 1 hour, 1 hour and almost 1 hour 15 minutes or something like that. So thank you very much. It will be useful if you can, after this, you can still comment on this. This video will go live. You can still comment. If you add your comments when you watch this video afterwards, that will be useful. That can help me. That can help Ganashamji and whatnot, Alokji, to decide if we want to do this session again on something else, and if so, what should be the subject. Okay, that would benefit us the most, because those questions that I said, why, how, and what, they also apply to even doing a Facebook live session like this. Okay, thank you Ganashamji, and thank you everyone who joined. So with that, namaskar to everyone. Please stay safe, maintain social distancing, do exercise, do yoga, pranayama, whatever you can do meditation, wash your hands, and stay safe. Okay, and we all will pass through this. Okay, there is no excitement unless there are problems. Okay, so think of this in a positive fashion. Thank you everyone, and everyone, all of you, have a good day. All right, with that, I'll end.